And when I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
And if we're talking tight ends and we're going into round 2, maybe round 3, give me Ian Thomas, please. Let's just do the damn thing.
Just based on giving his overall ability. Again, I like his arm. I think he can make every throw.
The pick at number 12 is in.
All right, welcome back to Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast. I'm Russell Brown. Alongside me, as always, CP Christian Page. My man, how we doing?
Doing great. How are you, Russ?
Hey, man, I am doing very well. My son's football team is in the playoffs. They got their last regular season game this Saturday. That has been taking up a tremendous amount of my time. I didn't think it was going to, but you know, we practice a little bit more than the team that he played on last year. So it's been, a lot of time invested into it, but it's been paying off. And my son's having a really good year individually, but the team as well. So, been busy paying attention to as much draft and college football and NFL stuff as I can. How are you as far as everything that you've been going?
Yeah, I've been doing good. Halloween's probably my favorite holiday because I'm a big horror movie fan. So, any night I get a free, I'm definitely sitting down with the DVR and watching any kind of Halloween movie. So just got back. Russ and I were talking before the show, and I just got back from the Joker movie a few days ago. And, man, it's super good, but it's not for the faint of heart. So if you're somebody that kind of shies away from certain heavy storylines and plots of movies, don't go watch this. But Joaquin Phoenix does an incredible job and puts a different twist, I guess, on the Joker that we used to, but it doesn't give too much things away. So there's definitely still kind of that unknown that we know and love about the Joker.
Give me one NFL player or draft prospect that is comparable to the Joker.
Oh, this is hard because the Joker's character deals so much with like the mental element of everything. You may have to give me some time just to not make for a bad podcast and just sitting here not thinking of anything. But I don't know. I don't know.
You can weigh on that till the end of the show. How about that?
Okay. All right. Give me some time. I'll think of somebody.
All right. Well, let's jump into what we got going on. There's a ton of stuff going on across the landscape of college football to the NFL. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Denver Broncos are playing right now, 7-6. Rookie Mecole Hardman made a great touchdown grab. Just his ability to find the football, make that catch, and he just made a punt return all the way up to the 20 of the Broncos. So he's been very exciting. But we don't really want to talk about rookies. We want to talk about college football because, like I said, the landscape is changing. It's been very competitive over the last couple of weeks, and we've got to start with the team that is ranked second in the country, and that is the LSU Tigers. And this team is legit. I think they're legit. I don't know what you're thinking on LSU, but what's your feel for LSU as a whole before we jump into a specific player?
Yeah, I think they're one of the more complete teams in college football. Sure, I understand some of the defensive struggles, but look, when it boils down, they still have an incredible cast if you're just going by individuals. Christian Fulton, Grant Delpit, got Rashard Lawrence up front. You got a few linebackers there, and a guy that we'll be talking about in a couple of years, Derek Stingley at cornerback, that is one of the best in college football. So we'll put a pin in him in a couple years and we'll start talking about him. But LSU, their offense, Joe Brady coming over as passing game coordinator from the Saints has done wonders for Joe Burrow going forward. And he is by far probably the most impressive player in college football just of what we knew about him last year. I know Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts are doing their thing right now for Oklahoma and Ohio State, but still just based on kind of okay season for Joe Burrow a year ago. Now he's one of the best college football quarterbacks, and he's one of the best draft prospects just considering need at that certain position.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about Joe Burrow here in a second. And LSU, in their what are they? They're 6-0 in their 6 games. They have scored 42 points or more in all 6 of their games. They are just lighting teams up at every single level. And they were close with Florida. Florida's defense played very well, I thought, for pretty much those 3 quarters. And then they couldn't afford to turn the football over. And sure enough, their last drive of the game, they ended up turning the football over after going 13 plays, getting into the red zone, and then turning it over. But realistically, I mean, LSU was able to close that game out, and that's what good football teams do. And they're doing it because, Joe Burrow, he's playing on a different level right now. And I think, truthfully, there has been no player in college football or for the 2020 NFL draft, and this is if Joe Burrow decides to go pro, nobody's done more for their draft stock, in my opinion, than Joe Burrow. I mean, he has been just absolutely lights out for them. He's completing close to 80% of his passes, over 2,100 yards, 25 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's making good decisions with the football, and when he has the football, he can tuck it and run. He's not doing it a ton, but he can still do it. He's been doing so many different things from the anticipation side of things, from working through progressions. Can he hit every single throw? I don't know if he can do that. I mean, I think Tua could probably hit just about every single throw because of the arm strength. But Joe Burrow is very good, and it brings me to the question of, is he the top quarterback on the board right now?
That's tough to say.
I know we're 6 weeks in, but
yeah, I mean, it just depends on preference. I mean, I think Tua is still, because Tua hasn't done anything to diminish his draft process or his draft prospectus, going forward. If he was ranked as QB1 or QB2 behind Justin Herbert, but Joe Burrow, again, when you see that ascension of just where he was, it's hard to really not buy into what he's doing, because you think he improves from year 1 at LSU to year 1 at LSU to year 2, and then what does that mean? How does he gradually improve from being his last year at LSU to the NFL? So I think just that coachability, that ability to get better and grow, I think is very attractive. But Tua's also, in that realm. Sure, he's playing with an incredible cast of wide receivers and personnel, but I don't know. It's tough. I think those are the top 2. And Justin Herbert going forward, we'll just go ahead and jump into this conversation. I still want to see more from him. Mm-hmm. I know he had, from a production standpoint, I think 17 touchdowns, only 1 interception. He's played really well. But I think sometimes that Oregon offense just kind of limits some of his capabilities. So it may be he's falling victim of that offense, just kind of a simple offense just based on, standing in the pocket, delivering quick throws. But I think Joe Burrow, based on the personnel he's running and based on the offense he's operating in, and it does help that he has Joe Brady as the passing game coordinator that was at the New Orleans Saints. That definitely helps. Probably some draft circles really fall in love with this guy based on, maturity and knowledge perspective. I would say 2 is still 1, but I'm not afraid to say Joe Burrow is comment number 2. But I think Justin Herbert's still there. I think it's nice to have this growth of Joe Burrow, because even though this quarterback class, it's not bad, I think there's just some that's kind of fallen off the mark. Guys like Jordan Love at Utah State, he's just been okay this year. Jake Fromm, we saw how vulnerable he was, or how he is, against a team like South Carolina this past weekend. So it's good to know that Joe Burrow's stepping up. Guys like Jalen Hurts out of Oklahoma stepping up. So it's nice to kind of have that solidify, top 4 or 5 guys now, and Joe Burrow kind of leads that pack.
Well, and you could throw in another name as well, Sam Ehlinger from Texas. Now, I don't think he's on that level. He's probably more of like I don't know, QB7, QB8, QB9, somewhere down there, in the second or third tier of quarterbacks. But he's played very well as too. So I mean, there's just so many different guys, and it was so interesting. And the reason why we're talking about this, obviously, because we have to talk about quarterbacks with the like you mentioned, the growth of Joe Burrow. And what's crazy to me too is Tua. 27 touchdowns, 1 interception. Just absolutely insane. He's such a good decision maker. Again, he can make just about every throw. And I'm not sitting here saying Joe Burrow is QB1. I don't think he is just yet. I like Tua. Tua was my QB1 going into it. I'm going to stick with that. And I could see Joe Burrow staying another year at LSU. He can't stay. He's a senior. Really? I thought he was a junior. Maybe he's a redshirt junior.
Well, he was a graduate from Ohio State with 2 years of eligibility left. So he had the opportunity, I guess, last year if he wanted to stay or go. And obviously he didn't have a good enough season, I guess, so to speak, to make that jump. But, yeah, Joe Burrow, I guess it is his last year at LSU, but he's having one heck of a finale.
I got to be mixing him up with somebody else then. But anyways, so this stemmed from a question. I was on 1270 The Fan in Buffalo yesterday, like I am every Wednesday, which you guys can check out 10:20 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every single Wednesday on 1270 The Fan in Buffalo, New York with Jerry Sullivan and Bobby Rosati. But it was a question of being that they're, Bills based and focused on the Buffalo Bills. They asked me, would you rather have Josh Allen if you're the Bills, or would you not have Josh Allen and take a quarterback from the 2020 NFL draft? Because we were talking about Herbert and Tua and Burrow and all this stuff. And I went with the known. I went with what I know about Josh Allen, trusting that I could have the coaching staff and myself and everything else to develop him as a quarterback, compared to taking something, I don't want to say off the street, but essentially off the street from Tua or Joe Burrow, who are talented, but I don't know if those guys would fit in my system per se and everything else. So that brings me, my question to you is, would you rather have a quarterback from the 2018 NFL draft, whether it's Josh Allen or Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, whoever, would you rather have one of those guys or a player that's in this 2020 NFL draft, like Joe Burrow, Tua, Herbert, Ellinger, Jake Fromm, Jalen Hurts, whoever it may be?
That's tough, because I completely agree with you based on the Josh Allen question. I definitely side with him because we know what player he is right now. We know the product that he's still growing, and Buffalo's in a really good spot right now, just based on the organization, and he's a big reason for that. So you're seeing that maturation process with Josh Allen, because he seemed, we saw him at the Senior Bowl. He seemed eager to learn. And I think there was a little bit of, I guess, a chip on his shoulder because, people constantly threw the low completion percentage on him, maybe the turnovers, or him trying to do too much in a scene like Wyoming where he had a lot put on his shoulders, but he answered the call, in my opinion. So you're seeing that kind of that grit and grind, and that also that leadership and maturity come to fruition at Buffalo. I still think he has the world of potential going forward. But going back to the original question, I still, Josh Rosen's in a really tough place. It doesn't help that, going from Arizona to Miami to I can say at that point, Arizona was in a very dysfunctional situation. We know Miami is in a tremendous dysfunctional situation right now. Players wanting to leave, not knowing, who to start at quarterback, this, that, and the other. So, it's just natural that you want to punt on Josh Rosen right now, just because we still don't know what he's capable of yet. I know there's that potential, but based on, the sample size we have in the league right now, it's not great. Sam Darnold, though, I think you still take him over anybody coming out of this class. I think he showed his potential. And I know, sure, he had the best game of his career this past week against the Cowboys, but I think Sam Darnold has the physical tools. Seems like they've really bought into him in New York. So I'm still going to side with Sam Darnold, because the reasons why, comparing him to this 2020 NFL draft class, Tua Tagovailoa, sure, he's a dynamic playmaker, incredible when he has to think on the fly, but he has some injury issues going forward, and I think that's going to be a red flag. So that's definitely a disparity between the two. Justin Herbert, there's some question marks based on, what his mental capacity is. Can he kind of grow out of that offense? I'm not blaming Mario Cristobal and some of the simplistic, schemes that he runs out of, but I think those are some major question marks, and just, what is his full capability? And then Joe Burrow, is he a one-hit wonder? We don't think he is, but I think that's definitely a valid question. And even though I know Sam Darnold dealt with a ton of turnover issues when in his final year at USC, but I think you're seeing him grow as a leader and as a quarterback in the NFL. So I'm still going to side with Sam Darnold. Baker Mayfield's kind of a mess right now. I'm not punting on him going forward, but I think Sam Darnold takes the cake when comparing these two classes. I like Lamar Jackson too, so I'm not punting on him either.
Yeah, I agree. I have a hard time just saying scrap the 2018 class, give me the 2020 class. I think it's a very interesting question, but at the end of the day, I know what I'm getting out of Sam Darnold, and truthfully, really, we've only seen a full season of a sample size. He didn't play the entire year last year. He's missed some games this year, and I think he's only played 16 or 17 games. So there's essentially a full season under his belt. I need more time with that, but I like what I've seen so far. I still am a fan of Josh Rosen. He's just been in two terrible situations. I like Josh Allen, and I wasn't that big on Allen, but I still like him, and I think he's doing a lot of the things right. And on top of that, with Josh Allen, it's just like he seems like such a good leader, and it seems like he's destined to get Buffalo back in the playoffs and destined to maybe get this team a playoff win, and then maybe they could build on top of that and maybe eventually win the AFC East and get a home field game and everything else. But I really like what he's doing. I really hope that they get him a true number one receiver. Maybe they're a team that takes a T. Higgins or I don't think CeeDee Lamb would be there, but maybe like Chenault from Colorado could be a player that they're interested in the draft. But I think they need another wide receiver in that offense. But yeah, I'm with you. I think that group in 2018 is just still so good. It's still very new. And if I'm an offensive coordinator, if I'm a head coach, if I'm an organization, I'm not giving up on any of those guys just yet. I'm waiting. And despite of the guys like Tua and everything else, and Tua might be the only guy that I might say, okay, I'm going to really consider this. But like Justin Herbert, I'm concerned with the shoulder injuries or the collarbone injuries over the course of his career. Joe Burrow, is he a one-hit wonder? You bring up a very good question. We don't know. I mean, we still got to see more there, and that might be something where I say, hey, I'm not going to take this guy top 10. I'm going to take him, middle to late first round just because I need to see more, whatever it may be. So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to go 2018 on that, but I mentioned a couple of receivers. I think we have to talk about a couple of receivers here. Alabama has been just lights out. Like we mentioned, they've had Tua going 27 touchdowns with 1 interception. Well, the wide receiver group is, I don't want to say it's wide open because the consensus, it seemed like going into the year, was Jerry Jeudy being the number one wide receiver. But Devonta Smith has played very well this year. Henry Ruggs has played very well this year. Devonta Smith, 38 receptions for over 630 yards and 9 touchdowns. He's got more receiving yards, more receptions than CeeDee Lamb. The only thing he doesn't have him beat in is touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb is at 28 receptions, 610, and 10 touchdowns. So I'm really curious as far as like, how would you rank the Alabama guys with CeeDee Lamb and maybe somebody like T. Higgins or anybody else?
That's tough. I mean, just put them in a blender or a vacuum and just pick one out and you're going to be set. I don't think there's really a wrong answer here because, especially with these Alabama guys, I'm pretty sure – I mean, you hear the joke about whether it's a joke or reality about the rock, paper, scissors. What routes are we going to run? Who's going to be the primary target for Tua at quarterback? Because these guys are so versatile. Because Devontae Smith, he can play outside. He's fast enough to play in between. He's quick enough to, make tacklers and defenders miss underneath. You can say the same thing about Jeudy, who can be a little more physical, more of a vertical threat. Henry Ruggs can really simply do all of it. Maybe a little slender frame to be a wide receiver one in the NFL, but I definitely am buying into him wholeheartedly. So it's hard to really distinguish the difference because even though everybody, including myself, I'm sure I can speak on behalf of you too, was head over heels for Jeudy, and by far he's one of the most talented players, regardless of position, in college football in the NFL draft class. But these other wide receivers, including guys like CeeDee Lamb and potentially T. Higgins, they're not a rung below. If anything, this is why it's really important to tier guys off because they're so similar in what they can do. And CeeDee Lamb definitely showed that this past weekend, finding ways to really bully and manipulate that Texas secondary. And, we can talk about Jalen Hurts and CeeDee Lamb just making one move and getting wide open. CeeDee Lamb created so much for himself this past weekend, whether that's on the field or in the draft circles. It's really hard to look past what he's doing and not consider him a wide receiver one because if you're just talking based on value, CeeDee Lamb, I think eventually he's going to climb the ladder and be in that top 10 discussion. I think he's definitely made his mark. Jerry Jeudy's in that top 5 discussion. Henry Ruggs may be in that 12 to 15 discussion. So I think this is why you tier them off, and you really have to consider value if you're in those organizations. But I think there's probably 3 to 5 guys in this draft class, including T. Higgins, potentially some other players that could be considered that primary wide receiver one caliber player.
Well, and I don't even think you could put it on like tier 1, tier 2. I think you would with this group, it's like you have to put it tier 1A, tier 1B, then you go to 2. And like 1A for me would be Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, and then 1B would be Smith and Ruggs, and then probably T. Higgins, and then 2, I'm probably going to put in a Shenault from Colorado, or Justin Jefferson from LSU, or Devin Duvernay from Texas, maybe even, or a Tyler Johnson from Minnesota, or who's his teammate? What the hell's his name? Oh my God, from Minnesota, Rashad Bateman. You've got Michael Pittman from USC. There's a ton of guys. So it is really pick your flavor, but I'm with you. I think if there's anybody that's going to really, in my opinion, push, one, it's pick your flavor, but two, it's like if there's anybody that's going to push Jerry Jeudy, it's CeeDee Lamb. And I think CeeDee Lamb is – it really wouldn't surprise me if we saw like Jeudy and Lamb both go in the top 10. I don't think they both go in the top 5. And I don't even know if we would see one of them go in the top 5 unless like I'm trying to think of like the draft order right now, like the Bengals, the Dolphins, the Redskins, maybe the Redskins would, but the Redskins are going to be in a position to where they could take Tristan Wirfs, Andrew Thomas, Chase Young. And that really brings up a point of like, I guess I kind of want to play this with you is we've seen like guys like Jalen Ramsey get traded. We've seen teams get multiple first-round picks, but we all know Miami's got, it seems like a dozen first-round picks at this point. I think they've got 3. They're probably going to pick twice in the top 10. If they got the first pick, Miami, we know they're tanking for a quarterback, it seems like. Do they take the quarterback at 1 and pass on Chase Young, or do they take Chase Young and then let's say they pick 7th or something, and then they take whatever quarterback's left over, if it's Herbert or if it's Burrow, or they settle for, I don't know, Jake Fromm or whoever. Which scenario could you see being more of a possibility, and what scenario would you do?
It's hard to talk yourself out of taking a quarterback at 1, even though, I am a firm believer in best player available. I believe both of us are. I believe, over 50% of people, making these decisions think that as well. At least I hope they do. So it is tough to pass up on guys like a Chase Young who continually, not that his draft stock could really be, ascend this year, but he's finding ways to do it. He's just been dominant, from start to finish every single game. And so it's really tough to pass up on Chase Young, who has every bit as ability as the guys like Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, Nick Bosa, Quentin Williams, those type defensive linemen. He has that kind of impact that he could really add immediately to the Dolphins organization, and a spark that they definitely need. But it's hard to steer away from a quarterback because, at that point, we'll figure out where their second pick is. Say it is at 7, 8, like you were alluding to, then, you may have a possibility at, potentially a Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert. I think Tua will be the first pick or the first quarterback selected, whether that's Miami's doing or Cincinnati. So, again, if I'm in that situation, I really like best player available, but it really does. And I know I'm kind of steering away from answering the question. It really does depend on where that second pick is, because, that determines, based on the value of the quarterback. Again, it depends on how, said team, values those quarterbacks. Is there a big disparity, a big gap between Tua, Herbert, and Burrow, or whoever they may think? Because then again, you got that third first round pick too. So you're at the back end of the first round, and, maybe they like Jake Fromm. And I don't think he's a first round quarterback, but maybe they like him and they can pick him in the 20s, get Chase Young at 1, get a guy like, I don't know, maybe get a receiver like a Henry Ruggs or, a T. Higgins with your second pick, and then go get your quarterback with your third first-round pick. So I think there's definitely scenarios that could play out. But I don't know. Just based on my brand and what I want to go with going forward, I say take best player available. This case, it would be Chase Young, but it definitely depends on just the order and how everything shakes out.
What I would do if – just an FYI for people out there, Patrick Mahomes is laying on the ground, is not moving his right leg. He's got
was his right leg the same one that he's injured the past couple weeks?
I think so. He has not. He just took off his helmet. Wow, that was a little scary. Hopefully, he did not just break his leg. If I'm Miami, I agree with what you're saying. But if I'm Miami, I'm going with Josh Rosen. I'm building around Josh Rosen, and I'm picking first. I'm taking Chase Young. I need a defensive end so bad because they only have 5 sacks on the year, I believe. I think they have 1 interception maybe. They're only – I mean, yeah, I get it. They're only scoring 40 points on the year. But either way, I'm sold on Josh Rosen. The reason why I brought this up was because we were talking about the quarterbacks. Well, now it brings us into that. If I'm not going to give up on a 2018 draft quarterback, if I'm one of those teams, I'm not giving up on Josh Rosen yet. Like, he's been put in a very bad situation. You traded away his starting left tackle. You've traded away his starting cornerback. You're probably trading away his running back. So, if I'm them, I'm just in a situation where I'm going Chase Young, and then I'm probably picking in the top 10 again. I'm probably going to go with one of the offensive linemen, Andrew Thomas, again, Tristan Wirfs, whoever. Or maybe I go with the best interior offensive lineman, Tyler Biadasz, and just be done with it from Wisconsin. And I didn't butcher that name, by the way. And
no, I am proud of you.
Yes, and then my third first round pick, I'm going after, I don't know, the best corner on the board, whoever it may be. Maybe it is, maybe it's Bryce Hall. Maybe I take the risk on him. I know he got hurt. I know he's done for the year. But at the end of the day, is he a fringe first rounder? He's a first round talent, but is he going to be there late in the first round? Probably. Do you hold off and take him in the second round? So there's a lot of options for them. But again, I don't see where they would take a quarterback if I'm Miami. So I don't know. It's so interesting to me. And we're now getting to the point of the year where we can start playing around with this stuff and start talking about it a little bit more. Whereas a few weeks ago, it was kind of just whatever, it's August, let's see how part of the year plays out before we do anything else. You know what I mean? So it's kind of fun. I got to regain my train of thought here. I'm watching them play. Okay, his leg is not broken, so that's a good thing.
Okay. I just want, and yes, I hope Patrick Mahomes is okay. I just want Josh Rosen to be in a situation where he succeeds. And I think Miami is too much of a mess for even him and the talent he has to really fix, because it's a first-year head coach that was kind of a defensive coordinator, kind of not at New England, and he's still trying to invest himself and get prepared to lead a group of young players. And we've already seen the aftermath of people not wanting to play for not necessarily him but the organization. So for selfish reasons, can Josh Rosen be Big Ben's backup for the next year and then be the Steelers quarterback, or can he go to a situation where he can succeed, because he has all the talent in the world? And I didn't like all the backlash he received during the 2018 draft process, and mostly it was because of some of his political views, or maybe it was his religion views, whatever it may be. He got a bad rap, and sure, he was not afraid to stand on the table and speak volumes of what he believes in. But I think from a physical standpoint, he has all the tools to succeed. He just needs to be in a position to get there. And I know there's some examples where it's Baker Mayfield, he's done okay for the most part, number 1 overall pick. They believed in him. Yeah, but have you seen, who Cleveland's added around him? And so he's not even playing outstanding right now. He's just getting by. He's okay. Josh Allen's a really good example, though, of maturing in a organization really buying into him, because they invested in him and they're building around them. Do they have any elite players on their team? No, but they're finding pieces around the build. So I guess that's my little soapbox for the day. I want Josh Rosen in a situation where he can succeed, and maybe it comes with those 3 first-round picks in 2020.
Oh, I'm with you 100%. I mean, he was my top-ranked quarterback. It's painful to see, because I think he's very talented. I know kind of his actions they speak a lot louder than words and performance on the field, but I think he's still very talented. I think he's a player you can certainly build around, and I think he's a player that you can win with, but he's never been put in a winning situation since he's been a part of an NFL franchise. He was on the worst team last year. He's on the worst team again this year. And I'm at a point like, is he going to just get cut and he's going to have the freedom to sign wherever he wants, or is he going to be traded? Like, and if he does get traded, is it a team like Pittsburgh? There's no way Miami trades him to New England. There's no way that even happens. So, like, outside of Pittsburgh, where else does he go? Does he go to Washington? Does he go to, why would he go to Washington when Dwayne Haskins is there? So, like, where does he go? I mean, I just, is it the Chargers maybe? Does he go back to California and he plays there and third time's the charm type of deal if Phillip Rivers decides to retire? Like, I honestly just don't know where Josh Rosen would go.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of those question marks that we kind of had at the beginning of the year, with the obvious, quarterback needs with Cincinnati, and Andy Dalton, hasn't answered the call. And, I mean, even talking about the Dolphins itself, and then, the Redskins, I think they're going to eventually buy into Dwayne Haskins, now that Jake Gruden's out of there. Let's hope they do. But, teams like, the Colts, Jacoby Brissett's played pretty well going forward, and they've already signed him to a slight extension, even though there is enough flexibility if they want to go in a different direction. And then you're looking at a team like Carolina. Cam Newton's obviously, he's at the end of his career, whether we want to admit it or not. Super talented individual, but he's getting those little nagging injuries that are keeping him sidelined and kind of being a detriment to his team. But then Kyle Allen steps up to the plate. So that's that's not necessarily a need anymore for them. So I think, it's a lot of these quarterback questions for certain teams are getting answered. And I mean, some of them are just certain injuries. How you have like the New Orleans Saints, Teddy Bridgewater stepping in, this, that, and the other. So it is hard to find a team that would be looking for a quarterback, at least right now, outside of those, first couple of teams.
What about your Tennessee Titans?
Tennessee Titans would be a good fit. But I think they have a lot more questions too. I don't know if their situation is really that much better than Miami's. I know their on-field performance is a little better, and they're run a lot better with the general manager, John Robinson. But maybe there is a way that Josh Rosen can become the Titans quarterback, because there's a decent core around that group if they can solidify some pieces up front that could kind of meet the requirements of getting Josh Rosen in a position to succeed. But across the board, some quarterback needs are just week by week getting answered.
You know what I could see happening? I could see definitely Tennessee, but I could see Bruce Arians. I know, like, it's not necessarily like his type of guy, but I could see Bruce Arians taking a chance. I don't think he's going to fix Jameis. It showed last week. Jameis had 5 picks, and Jameis is Jameis. That's the thing. Jameis is Jameis. He's not. I don't think he's going to be any better than what he is. He'll have some high points in certain weeks, but realistically speaking, I think he's a mid-tier to average at best type of guy. I don't think he's going to ever be elite. I don't want to say he's bottom of the barrel, but I think if I'm Bruce Arians, I'm calling Miami and saying, hey, what do we got to give you to get this guy up the road? How can we get this guy? And I would try to build around him with Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, O.J. Howard, Peyton Barber.
Ronald Jones has come along. Yeah, he's had an outstanding year so far.
Yeah, I would go with that, and I would spend the rest of my draft get me an offensive lineman, and then spend the rest of the draft on the defense. Continue to build up the defense, and who knows? If I'm Bruce Arians, I'm making that phone call. I think that would be a fit. I know he's not necessarily his type of guy, but Bruce Arians had Carson Palmer, right?
Yep.
He had. I don't see why not. I would be doing it if I was him. So I don't know. That's my opinion on that. We've talked way too much about Miami Dolphins because they're god awful.
Well, get used to it because it's going to keep happening.
Oh, that's so true. That is so true. But I do have one last question, and then we will move on to some players that we've watched over the last couple of weeks, what we're excited for the weekend, then we'll get on out of here. If you guys, of course, want to follow us on Twitter, you guys can do that at Russ NFL Draft. @_Christian Page. Smash the follow button. But I do have an interesting question. The top running back in college football is Chuba Hubbard from Oklahoma State. He's got over 1,000 yards rushing, 13 touchdowns. But the two running backs behind him, J.K. Dobbins from Ohio State and Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin. And J.K. Dobbins, 116 carries, 6 rushing touchdowns, and 826 rushing yards, quietly having a impressive start to the season. And then Jonathan Taylor really putting himself into the mix for running back number 1 in this draft. Travis Etienne, not saying he's playing bad, but he's definitely not playing like the guy that we know. DeAndre Swift, not necessarily playing bad, but again, not playing like the guy that we know. And I get it, from production to draft prospect, it's kind of a little bit different. But at the same time, J.K. Dobbins and Jonathan Taylor are playing, in my opinion, lights out for their teams of Ohio State and Wisconsin. And that brings me up to the question of, out of these two running backs, who would you take? I'm assuming it would be Taylor, but then where would the next guy fall? So where would Dobbins fall if he was to go pro? And then I do have a question in just regards to Ohio State and Wisconsin. But answer the running back question first. Where would Dobbins go? Because I'm assuming Taylor is up there. And is Taylor going to be running back 1?
There's a possibility. I mean, I know, like you mentioned, Travis Etienne's still doing his thing. DeAndre Swift's been fine this year. I think Georgia's kind of underwhelmed offensively, so he's kind of limited based on, some of the personnel and the coaching staff there, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, with going – I always feel like mid-second round is just kind of the sweet spot for running backs. There's a little bit of room for error if you want to buy into a guy with a lot of potential like J.K. Dobbins, but a guy that's, some people were kind of on the fence with a year ago or really entering the season, and now, like you said, he's burst onto the scene. Jonathan Taylor has done everything to really increase his draft stock. You're talking about guys like CeeDee Lamb or Joe Burrow, really we knew a lot about them, but coming in, we knew what potential they had, especially looking at Lamb in that offense. But Jonathan Taylor is escalated his game, and we knew what he was capable of. Really can do anything in between the tackles. You're seeing him involved a little bit more in the receiving game. Taylor, I think it's almost like the, what we were talking about, the wide receivers. It's almost you tier them off, but you kind of do the 1A, 1B, and one whole tier and kind of separate them in that way, because he's just been a dynamic runner. And sure, he's not this home run hitter, which I don't think there's many home run hitting running backs in the NFL anymore. I mean, defenses are just too fast, and, I don't know. It's just not set up to really have those home run hitters anymore. But I think Taylor is just – it's hard to really, always make the kind of the phrase checking the boxes. It's hard to really leave any box unchecked for him because he answers the call every single weekend. It helps that he's playing with, a very friendly offense, but Wisconsin still, outside of Tyler Biadasz, they still had a lot to, figure out up front. It's Wisconsin. They figured it out, of course, but they still had a lot of starts they had to replace. And then Taylor definitely helped them get comfortable going forward. And they had a quarterback situation where they had to get comfortable with as well. So, to answer your question, like Taylor, is he RB1? I definitely think you can make the case because I think for me, he's been the most consistent and the most impressive running back just based on the guys in the 2020 class.
I like both of them a lot. I think Taylor is running back 1. I'm going to be honest with you. He is just consistent as hell every single week. And he's going to face stack boxes, and he's still producing at an extremely high level. And he's a big part to why Wisconsin is having the success that they're having right now, why they're 6-0, why they're the 6th-ranked team in the country. And then on top of it, I mean, Taylor's still catching the ball. He's got 15 receptions, which is tied for second best on the team. So he's got 4 touchdowns as a receiving back. And he's just been, I think, what we wanted to see from ETN and Swift. Taylor's been able to do that. And I know they haven't played, a tremendously tough schedule. Kent State, they won 48-0. UCF, CMU shut out both of those teams, and they only beat Northwestern by 9. But at one point against Michigan, they were winning 35-0. They blew out Michigan State 38-0. Wisconsin is just incredible. And that brings me to the point of Wisconsin, Ohio State. Wisconsin's ranked 6th. Ohio State is ranked 4th in the country. They play not this weekend, but the following weekend. And I'm curious as to what you think of the two teams, and could we see both of these teams in the college football playoff? And if we don't see both teams, which one will we see at the end of the year?
If Wisconsin has an SEC tag on their name, I think you're looking at them as a top 3 team in college football. They've given up 29 points in 6 games this year. I don't care who you play. That's incredible. So we talk about Jonathan Taylor. We talk about, their offensive line. Those are almost locks every year for Wisconsin. But their defense has been elite. And sure, they're not playing juggernauts of offenses, but still, we'll get that answered, when they go to Columbus, in a couple weeks. Or when they play Iowa. I know Iowa's nothing special on offense, but they're kind of a similar brand of football. So we'll see physicality-wise how Wisconsin matches up there. And then with Ohio State, we know the case with them. That's every single year. I think they are still the team to be in the Big Ten, but I definitely think, they may get a reality check when they have to host Wisconsin in a couple weeks. So with Ohio State, the evolution of J.K. Dobbins, like we were saying, a couple of receivers there, and Justin Fields, and the best prospect in the 2020 class in Chase Young, they're definitely poised to be a college football playoff team. And I don't think, let's say Wisconsin holds it within a 1-possession game, 7 to 3 points. I definitely think there's a case of them to be in contention. This is as similar as the Alabama-Georgia situation a few years back, where both teams made it to the playoffs and then both teams found themselves in the national championship. Is Wisconsin going to have to be a little more dynamic, a little more creative on offense? Possibly, because I think, the teams get a little tougher, the continue as the schedule goes. But I definitely think both of these teams have a legitimate case to be playoff contenders as long as Wisconsin stays on track defensively and continue to play just consistent football on offense.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think we could very well see both of them near the end. Definitely, I think these are the two teams that are going to be in the Big Ten championship game. I don't think Ohio State is going to lose a game, but I wouldn't be surprised if in 2 weeks Wisconsin goes to Ohio State and beats them. It really wouldn't surprise me. Wisconsin is allowing only 1.75 yards per carry. The only team better in the country with that is Penn State at 1.59. But Wisconsin's still only allowing 44 yards on the ground per game, and that's the best number in the country. So Wisconsin is legit. I think Penn State's also good, and I don't think they're great. I don't think they're on the same level as these two teams. So we'll see what happens. But it's a lot of fun for Wisconsin fans and for football fans. If you appreciate defense, you have to watch Wisconsin because their defense is just – they fly around. They make things miserable for quarterbacks. They stuff running lanes all day long, and it is good defensive football. And I unfortunately was on the wrong end of it this past weekend when Michigan State got shut out. So I digress. But that's all I have as far as questions. We hit a ton of stuff there. But really the last few weeks we've been grinding out film and paying attention to prospects. Has there been any player or players that have caught your eye at all over the last couple of weeks?
I think when you're looking at just players, we've been talking about, all podcasts long in the past couple of weeks of players that have really increased their draft stock. Javon Kinlaw from South Carolina, been a dominant force at defensive tackle for the Gamecocks this year. He showed that in the Georgia game. If there's one player you want to go back and watch for draft reasons in that game, go look at him, and all you have to do is hit play, and you immediately see the Georgia center in the backfield. He just has that kind of takeover ability. I hype up my man Derek Brown out of Auburn week in and week out, but Kinlaw has been every bit as impressive just based on how dominant he's been, and I think Kinlaw is definitely rising his draft stock. There's a lot of solid defensive tackles in this class this year.
Mm-hmm.
Are they tremendous pass rushers? No, but they get the job done. They do all the dirty work. Derek Brown, Javon Kinlaw, Marvin Wilson, my boy from Florida State, has been killing it this year so far as well. Neville Gallimore from Oklahoma, with kind of more of a true nose guard, so don't buy into all the box score statistics, but he's another guy that he's probably a borderline first-round talent based on, his positional value. He may slip into the second round. There's a lot of interior defensive line talent. and also Raekwon Davis is finally reaching that potential at Alabama this year. So definitely just the defensive line as a group has been really impressive over these past few weeks.
I've got a name, and this is a guy that, we've probably either talked about or you've read about, Isaiah Hodgins from Oregon State. I think he has played very well for them this year. He's a junior. It wouldn't surprise me if he came out just simply because of this production. And, the last 2 years, he's, 2018, he had 59 receptions. 2017, he had 31 receptions. He's consistently getting better. And this year, he's taken his game to another level. It's 6'4", 209. He's explosive. He's shown strong hands. And I just love everything that he's been able to do for Oregon State. Now, granted, he gets a lot of opportunities to catch the football because they're not a very good football team. But at the same time, I think he's doing a really good job at the catch point. I think he's doing a really good job. Just the way his releases, I think, are relatively clean. And I really like his skill set all the way across the board for Oregon State. So, definitely pay attention to Hodgins if you have not. But this weekend, we are entering week 7 of college football. Week 7, holy cow. And we are halfway through it. But there's some pretty good games on the schedule. Is there a game or two that you're going to be paying attention to? And if you are, any prospects to keep an eye on?
I wish I could go a little deeper than just the quarterback position, but since that was kind of a point of emphasis on today's show, Oregon-Washington, number 12. Oregon traveling to number 25, Washington. I think with Oregon's dominating defense, we were talking about Wisconsin's defense being impressive. Oregon's defense has been incredible as well, and they played some decent opponents as well. Their offense hasn't missed a beat really at all. And even in that Auburn game, their only loss of the season, their offense was still clicking for, about 3 quarters in that football game in Dallas the first week of the year. So, just essentially, I'm just looking at the quarterback positions. We talked about potential. Jacob Eason, from a physical standpoint, he has all the talent in the world. And so he just has to answer the call. And I think we'll see, can he really grasp everything between the ears in this game? Because Oregon's going to throw a lot of them defensively. They have a lot of personnel that can match up to Washington and their physical style of game on offense as well. So I think just looking at Jacob Eason here, and then still kind of, continuing to fill out your scouting report on Justin Herbert. Washington, they kind of underwhelmed a little bit as one of the Pac-12 preseason favorites right beside Oregon there. But I definitely think defensively they're definitely going to test Justin Herbert going forward. So even though, that's just kind of I don't say a poor answer, but I definitely think it's a very important game from an NFL draft scenario. And then just looking at Jake Fromm, they're playing Kentucky this weekend. I think Jake Fromm, just seeing how he reacts to that turnover-heavy game. I think he had 4 total turnovers versus South Carolina. One interception was not on him, but just seeing how, maybe from a maturity standpoint, how he kind of rallies the troops and gets a win against Kentucky. So I think I'm just looking at the quarterbacks this weekend. We'll go with that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I don't think that's a poor answer, though. I think Oregon, Washington, there's a ton of players in that game. Aaron Fuller, Nick Harris, if he plays the center for Washington, he's been dinged up, but if he plays, you've got a center and offensive lineman that you can pay attention to. Also, Oregon, they've got Shane Lemieux, their guard, who is aggressive as hell and a great left guard that I am a big fan of. How's Herbert going to look without Jacob Breeland now? No more Breeland. He's done for the year with a leg injury. And then they've got Troy Dye, one of my favorite linebackers in the class, just with his athletic ability. So, no, I really like that game. And really the Pac-12, I think, is the conference to watch this weekend. Arizona, USC, you've got Michael Pittman. You have Arizona's J.J. Taylor, and their what is their quarterback's name? Why am I drawing a blank? Khalil Tate? Yes, Khalil Tate. I was going to say Khalil Hodges. And then you've got Utah, Arizona State at Utah. We've talked about Utah's defense plenty of times. Benjamin for Arizona State, who you've written about. Zach Moss is my long-lost son, who's been very effective on only like 80 carries this year. So he's averaging like 9 yards a carry or something like that. Ridiculous. So I think, again, the Pac-12 has got a ton of players. So it's going to be a fun week. It's already kicked off. Last night we saw South Alabama and Troy. Tonight we've got UCLA and Stanford. They're playing right now. And tomorrow night, Ohio State at Northwestern, which should be an easy game for Ohio State, but we'll see. And then there's Pitt, Syracuse. I mean, there's a ton of games. So definitely check it out. And, of course, be sure to check us out on Twitter at Russ NFL Draft, @_Christian Page. Do us a solid. Go to Spreaker.com, subscribe, follow, rate, review the podcast. You can also do that on Apple Podcast. You can do that on Google Play. However you go about your podcast, search Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast, and we will be your source for everything NFL Draft, everything football from here on out. So, CP, thank you for joining me on this day. And appreciate you joining me and talking football.
Always a pleasure.
All right, man. Well, till next time. This is.
Oh, wait! I have to answer the question. I just killed your ending there. Jalen Ramsey is the Joker of the NFL because he finds ways to manipulate the media to get his way and to manipulate the organization. Because it's funny how now he's supposed to play this week for the Rams, possibly. Yet supposedly he's been sick, he's had back issues, or whatever else it is. So he found a way to manipulate the situation and get where he is. And also we know his character is a little sporadic overall. So that's my answer to your question of who is the Joker of the NFL.
I thought you were going to go Odell Beckham Jr., to be honest.
I thought about it.
Well, at least we're on the same page. So, well, CP, thank you for answering the question. Go enjoy some football, some other scary movies and everything else. But until next time, this is Cover One, the NFL Draft Podcast.